This is a video for the purchase system screen. Let me go ahead and indicate to you initially what you need to be doing. This application uses what is called the closed loop system. What that means is it's an architecture, the way that this was designed. What it means is that the purchase system is not done or used until you have inventory in the system. So you have to have the inventory screen with all of your inventory products in. Of course, you can add them periodically if you need to, but you basically want to start out by doing an initial inventory. What you would do is create a vendor record that says initial inventory. You can create a second one called periodic inventory. And what that means is that when you first set this application up, the initial inventory is used by store location and the initial inventory for that store. And what you would do is you would use the inventory that you added to your store, and you would create using your inventory low level report, you would use that to go ahead and first do that and then come in here to the purchase order showing that you have the stock on hand. That's done in the initial inventory. And the way you can do that is either create a PDF or use your iPad to take the information that you did in inventory, and you can pop over to the inventory screen either here or at the location at the top to look at items to make sure what the current status on that item is. Don't want to go too fast. I'm going to back up and say to redo this. Initial inventory or periodic inventory is based on what you actually found in your store, and now you're going to indicate on the initial inventory the items you actually have in your store. It's going to give you the value of your current inventory in the total over here. And the way you're going to do this is you're going to go through, create a product item for each one of your items by store. Here's your S1s as you're going down through the S1s. So I'm in store record number 1. You would go through each item. You would indicate the quantity on hand. If the item had a serial number, put in the serial number at this time. If there's a purchase product cost in this, put that purchase product cost in the purchase order record. Now, in this case, I put in the full price of the item, and actually this thing would be less than that because it depends on what you bought it from that particular vendor for. This is going to kind of be a little tough to do your initial inventory because you're going to have receipts of some form or a standard cost that you're getting from the vendor, not price, but cost. This is what you pay for the item. This particular number times the number that you actually have on the shelf will yield the subtotal. The average cost would be in here for the number of records after you do this a number of times. This will change to show you the average price you're paying for the items, giving you an indication if prices are going up or down. And in this case, you can check with the vendor record to make sure what you are paying for that item over time. The date received is the date you actually received it. If you're doing an initial inventory, this would be the date that you did the inventory. And obviously this would be the date received if you're actually purchasing hard items that are coming in, and the quantity that is coming in. Now this is where, when you receive the items by the purchase order, you would come to this screen, and then you would take the paperwork from the vendor and indicate in here the date received, the quantity received, and so forth. Now, if you go to the portal record, which I'll cover separately, I'm going to show you where you can show low levels of receipt or damaged items in an RMA, and I'll explain that later. Let's explain the record up here a little bit. This is like the ones we did before, where when you click on the record, you pick the store, it automatically fills this in. You had to have created a new record for each individual new purchase order that you're doing by that store. You would be able to use a find if you were looking for a previously created purchase order, and you would use the purchase order number to find it, and or the vendor information, but that would be a kind of a tough way to find it. So you need to kind of have an idea of the purchase order you're looking for, or you can look in the list view or reports over here that are indicating all the things that have been purchased to this point, which we'll cover these later. Once you have the information in this case the vendor, if you're looking for a particular vendor, You can go to the vendor screen to see if that vendor is there, but this also gives you the information when you click on it. You pick the vendor from the drop-down list. I have 3 that I created here. They're phony, but I put them in there just so you can see how this works. And it gives you obviously the vendor name and their location as far as where they're at, which is put in here. So you can tell when the item comes in. And you may have multiple, say for example, ACE Bike Supply has multiple locations. You could actually put multiple locations in there and see the address as you're ordering items. In this case, I did not put in the sales phone, contact information, and so forth for this particular vendor. So when you actually add in real vendors, you're going to put that in the vendor screen, and then it's going to fill all this data in for you. If you have a website and you want to go review on a website, if they have a price list for items, you can jump over there to that website by clicking this button, as long as you had the website URL in this field. Down at the bottom, if you're doing a normal purchase order, the first thing that's going to happen you're going to see is you're putting in the information here. The summary subtotal in here is going to be all the items at full cost is going to be totaled here. This will be 0. And until you start receiving the items in here and adding the received amount, this will start to go up until these 2 match. If you have a match when you get done with this, then you know that you've received all the items for all the cost of the items. If one of them was damaged or missing, you're going to see a lower number here than you do on this side, indicating that you still have not received all the items yet. On this screen, also there is a tab where you indicate that you have paid for the individual purchase order. For example, this one was received, but it was not annotated. You do not click anything in this field because this is the purchase order number. You put in the date of the receipt, or the date that this is the date due. This is the paid date. The due date being the day that you're supposed to pay it, that's on the purchase order that is sent to you from the vendor. The paid date that you actually paid it. You paid it to whoever you paid it to. Now, the reason I don't use a drop down in this particular field is that first of all, it would overflow the field, and all you need to do is put the vendor name in here. Now, in some cases, you might be buying a one-off, where you're only going to buy one item from a vendor, and in this case, you just put that information from the purchase order that you're receiving for that particular vendor. The amount you're going to pay on this date and the amount that you're going to that was due will automatically put in here. For example, if I put in the pay amount due, in this, it'll automatically calculate the balance due. And in this case, you can see down here is the sum amount due. It'll give a differential between the actual paid sum and the balance that is still required to pay the invoice. And this is a running history of this invoice only. This is individual invoice purchase information. If you need to go to the portal record for the purchase order, that is available through this is the payment record, so you go to the payment portal screen. And just to recap, when you are using this record, it is for the individual purchase order for a vendor for a store. It is not, if you don't indicate a store or you don't put the vendor in, it's going to mess you up. So make sure that you do add that information into this particular document. You cannot skip by these things. These are critical to the way these reports work, so that when the reports are run, you can see all the information as it's properly annotated. You can jump back, by the way, using this button to get to the inventory. There's also a list view of all the PO numbers and POs that have been used. So if you had to go out and do a find by a purchase order or look for the particular purchase order, you could use the list view. These reports will be covered shortly by videos. Thank you.